Good afternoon. My name is Margaret Graziano, and I'm with Keen Alignment, and my guest today is Lauren Monick, and we're going to talk to each other and you about Lauren's journey from workplace striving to culture thriving. And a little bit about me, I have been in the cultural alignment field specifically for the last 10 years and in recruiting and search for the last 25, 30 years. And about 50% through my journey in recruiting, I started to get really curious on why so many companies kept experiencing turnover in the same jobs, or why a great candidate would take a job with what I thought was a great company only to call me in a year after and say, hey, it wasn't what you said it was, or it wasn't what they said it was. And so I got really curious. So I went back to school for organizational development, for industrial psychology, for behavioral analytics. And I started to go to work on getting curious about what causes turnover and why when people say yes to job A, a year later, they say, no, I'm not buying in anymore. And so I went on that path. And about a decade ago, I moved to the Bay Area and started Keen Alignment. And Lauren, why don't you do a little introduction on yourself as well?
So hello, everybody. I'm Lauren Monick, and I started my career in HR. I had a 25-year career in HR. I started as the HR tech and ended up as the Director of Administration and Finance. And I built my career through sheer grit and really went from the doing to the leading part of building culture at the company that I worked with. I did a lot of self-work in that period of time to become the leader that the company needed me to be.
Great, thank you. And you're since retired?
I am since retired. I'm now coaching and doing consulting in HR.
Awesome, thank you. So what we're promising that you're gonna walk away from this web training with is insights into how your own hardwired patterns of thought limit your effectiveness in key areas of life, especially at work. And we're going to give you an opportunity to glance into how new possibilities and shifts in perspective clear the way for breakthroughs in inspiration, energy, fulfillment, and results. And lastly, to start to look at a glimpse into the advantage of diversity and why it's so important in building an inclusive and high performance culture. And again, I've got lots of information to share, and Lauren has her own story to share, which we're learning people get way more out of stories than information. So here we go, we'll get started. So first and foremost, whether it's the Bureau of Labor Statistics, McKinsey, Gallup, PricewaterhouseCoopers, everyone is saying the same thing. 70% of our workforce in the United States is not engaged in either the work they're doing or the place that they're doing it for. And what drives engagement are the items around this circle, employee engagement. So first and foremost, people need to trust that the senior leadership team does what they say and has their back, that has the company's best interest in mind, keeps their word, and is holding the vision for everybody to follow. Whether we think people need leadership or not, they do. Second, people want, I gotta move this little thingy jiggy. People want to know that work and life can have an integration. For people my age in their 50s, it was we work when we work and we go home when we go home. Now, that wasn't the way it was for me because I was in recruiting and we worked pretty much 24/7. And then you have your millennials that they know how to integrate work and life because they're always online, checking email, and many CEOs, many salespeople, many managers, many people in HR today are integrating work and life. And people just want to know that the company is going to give back what they take. So if I need someone to work 2 weekends a month, am I willing to let them go to their children's baseball games or to a family event or to spend time with their aging parent? And many organizations miss the boat there. They're really focused on documenting time in, time out, and they forget about all the work people do after hours that they never document. Also, people need a good future. They want to know that whatever they're doing will be a bridge or a pathway to a bright future for them. They need to know that the company cares about the health and well-being, the safety of the people who work there. Now, safety used to mean, going home with all your limbs intact. Now, with this whole world of bullying and workplace violence, safety means so much more. Emotional safety, well-being, stress management, and violence safety, and of course, machinery safety. People want to know that whatever they're doing for their job connects with their higher purpose, that they have a sense of self-actualization or fulfillment in the work they do, or there's a level of excitement, that what they're doing taps into their highest self, turns on their inspiration, and tunes them into their natural innate wisdom. People want respect, acknowledgement in public if that turns the person on, correction in private. And sometimes for some people, it's acknowledgement in private too, but respect and understanding about what the employee needs. And by the way, I'm getting challenged a lot from managers who hear my talks and say, how come you never address what the manager needs? The manager needs respect too. If you agree to do a job, if you agree to be somewhere, if you agree to deliver a result, the manager deserves the respect of employees keeping their word. So it's a two-way street. Recognition. People want to be recognized for what they bring to the table, and they want to be recognized in the way that turns them on. The one size fits all, the Starbucks gift card, the employee of the month first parking lot, that doesn't appeal to everybody. Money doesn't appeal to everybody. Time off for good behavior doesn't appeal to everybody. So really understanding what people need and then demonstrating respect and recognition by giving them feedback, positive and negative, and rewards and recognition in the way that fits for them. People want to know that the mission and the vision of the organization are aligned with their own personal vision for themselves. If they can connect the dots, like Lauren worked for a company that preserved land and saved the earth. That's a big value for her, and I'll have her share that. And it had her be committed to that organization well beyond the identity of her job, because every day when she went to work, she had the experience of making a difference. People also need to feel that you care about the constituency that you serve, that you care about the customers, that you want to retain them, that you want to deliver excellent service so people keep coming back. The hospitality industry really has mastered this. They know if they do well with their people, if they train their people, if they have a good culture, those people will deliver extraordinary service. The tech industry has yet to learn this. The manufacturing industry is starting to learn it. At hospitality and healthcare, hospitality was first, healthcare was second. But any role where they're customer facing, how you treat your people is how your people are going to treat your clients. And then we come to diversity, and what I mean by diversity isn't that we have lots of different ethnicities, and that matters, but it's that everybody isn't just like me, that there's varying perspectives, that there's varying ages, that there's varying degrees of experience, that there's varying genders in different roles, that we gather people together and optimize the best of that collective possible with a unique and generous disbursement of talent. And then people also need to know there's on-the-job training. We have the largest number of people leaving the workforce of all time that we have ever experienced in, let's say, our 100 years. And we also have the largest number of people coming in. Within the next 3 years, millennials will take up 70% of the workforce. So you have the exiters and the enterers, and there's a big gap of training. And people want to know that if they come and work for your company, that they're going to get trained. These are the global drivers of engagement. And let's not forget inclusion. We've seen a lot in the news lately, maybe as a result of the Me Too movement, with very few women in leadership, especially in the Silicon Valley where I live, and with the boys club, and in some cases the girls club where men are excluded. But people need to feel like we all belong. So there's the variety of people in diversity, and then there's everybody has a say-so, or everyone's asked. So these are the global drivers of engagement. Most organizations that I work with are doing good in maybe 2 of these categories, and they're really struggling in the rest, because the day of working to get the work done, task focus, get the work done, has now expanded to, we got to get the work done while inspiring people. And so the game has become way more complex, and our customers, our employees, the people who work for us, are demanding so much more. So let's move on. The top 10 reasons people leave. They leave because the slide I just showed you isn't happening. So if you look at the top 10 reasons people leave, 80% of the reasons are due to cultural issues. Comp and benefit is about culture. Well-being is about culture. Management behavior is about culture. Career development is about culture. Work-life balance. Job characteristics is about culture. Like, did we tell people what to expect? And work environment. So if we want people to stay, and if we ourselves want to be at our best self at work, we have to pay attention to these things. So what I'd like to do is talk about state of mind, Lauren, and I want you to talk about your state of mind when we met, like all of it. You know, there you were, a one-woman band managing who knows how many things, and I'd like you to just talk about your state of mind back then, and the work you were doing, and your experience of all that.
Yeah, so wow, this was really intense for me. I was the office manager handling HR, IT, the clerk of the board. I was working for a public agency and a couple of other major areas in the company. And I was managing, and we also had an issue with leadership. So the general manager was having a crisis, and it created a problem with being able to get whatever we needed to get done. Plus, culturally, internally for me, it became something that was really difficult to do, like get online with work. And then we did, I got to have a conversation with the board of directors about what was going on. And knowing that we needed a shift in culture, they were really supportive of seeing something different happen. It was very interesting to watch, but I know that my state of mind at the time was, I don't know how to get any of this done, and I don't know how to cope. Just completely overwhelmed and almost, you know, pretty ineffective in some ways. I couldn't see a way out. And yeah, it was challenging. And I think that happens to a lot of people. I talked to a lot of people at the time, and it felt like that was happening in a lot of places. It wasn't an unusual experience.
And so when I met Lauren, she had reached out to my company to do the 360 reviews and to interview staff and find out what's going on around here. And when I interviewed her, she was handling, you know, it seemed like 10 different major roles at one time. And my experience is that she was hyperventilating in all there was to do and handle. And she couldn't see any other way of getting her work done than what she had done. So she had built this box around herself, around all there was to do and handle. And at some level, there was a little bit of state of mind of, I'm victim to it. I can't help it. This is just the way it is. And so as you're listening to this and you yourself say, yeah, I want a better culture, it really does begin with you doing an inventory of what's your state of mind. And then what's the state of mind of those around you? So Lauren, you know, there was several people who'd been with the OSA 13 years, 10 years, without actually mentioning the names, the roles, Say a little bit about the state of mind of those around you. I mean, it was pretty dark back then.
It was really dark. It was, people were hiding in their offices, literally hiding in their offices. They were not eager to be participatory, cooperative, productive. It wasn't that they were trying to be unproductive. It's that the culture was so dark that people were protecting themselves. Mm-hmm. And I mean, me too. I was one of those people hiding. It was a hiding culture. We were scared. We didn't feel safe.
Yeah, good. And I think that happens in many organizations, especially organizations where the leader is outside of their comfort zone and the leader is suffering, because especially, Lauren, your company at that point was 7 people.
Right, it's pretty small.
And the culture is who leadership is, and the culture is you were part of it. It was you and your boss, and that's who was running it.
Right.
So we all have something called a wall of thought. And our wall of thought is our beliefs about ourselves and about the environment we work in, our beliefs about what we're capable of and what our job is, our beliefs of what they think about us. I mean, I have it for sure. And what we don't realize is that that wall of thought is even there in the first place, and that it is clouding our view of what we see. It's coloring our vision of everything we see. So Lauren, a little bit of more detail about your wall of thought back in whatever it was, 2009, 2010.
Yeah, right about then. My wall of thought was, this is the only way there is. I'm a victim to this, and it's happening at me, and I have no control. It has to be this way. I have to create rules for people to follow because it's the only way to keep everything on track. So I was a big finger wagging, follow the rules, regulatory. I mean, it was pretty bad. I felt really bossy, and I got known as being bossy because I felt like it was the only way to keep things moving. And I have to say that I was part of the culture of it's not safe here because I didn't know how else to be. I just didn't know how else to feel like I had control.
And what was amazing to me, Lauren was my first customer in the Valley, and it was so pure and so innocent. She had no idea that she was being that way. She had no idea that she was gripping onto the work that she was doing, like gripping it, because it was all she knew. When we started talking about letting go and hiring more people, and I remember the attorney at the time and myself, we were both the 2 people she talked to all the time, like, you got to give up some of the responsibility, and I can't. And I think I see it in so often when I work with one woman or one man departments. There is this feeling like if I don't have control over everything, I will have no control over anything. And so there's our own wall of thought, and then there's the wall of thought that everyone we work with has. So, Lauren goes into it with her thinking, and then there's the guy running the field who had his thinking, and then there's the girl running training who's got her thinking, and then there's the person running volunteers with their thinking. And the problem is none of these wall of thoughts are effectively integrating with each other's wall of thoughts. So everybody's showing up with their baggage, and everybody's showing up with their own perspective of the world, thinking that that's everybody else's. And so share a little bit about like the rework, the dysfunction that was going on back then, like specifics without names, please.
Working, it didn't even matter who it was, whatever position was going on there, all the positions, we were never asking each other what we needed. It was telling from each perspective. There was a lot of telling how to do. And it was shocking for people would avoid each other. So work wouldn't get done because we didn't want to be told what to do. And each of us, it was volunteers, it was field, it was planning, it was every department had their own silo. And our thinking was, I've got to protect my silo. And if anybody gets in there, I can't control it. Therefore, I can't do my job.
Yeah. And this was a 6-person company. So we work with organizations with 206, 506, 2006. And so when an organization is allowed to continue to grow in silos, it gets really funky and really crazy, because you've got this whole department here, this whole group with their own mindset, their own framework, working alone. And then you've got the CEO who may or may not see it happening, depending on their personality, and may not know what to do about it. But this happens, and it happened at her organization. So the first thing that I needed to do as the consultant that was hired to fix all this was to find out where people were at. And so I had to get really curious and really tease it out from Lauren. She didn't, even though she hired me, I came as a referral. She didn't inherently know to trust me. I had to earn my trust with her, and I had to ask questions and ask her, so what's so today? If there was a metaphor for how you feel, what's that metaphor? And one of the metaphors that she gave me was that she felt like she was in the middle of a tornado with the barn moving and cows flying around and shrapnel coming at her. And that curiosity allowed me to really get in her world and have empathy for, oh my gosh, look at what she's dealing with. And then when I understood what she was dealing with, I was better equipped to coach her for what else could be possible. So first, it's getting really curious about what's going on, beginning with the person responsible for culture or who is interested in culture, and then the CEO and everybody else. And the next thing is creating a compelling purpose, whether it's for the organization overall or for the department or for multiple departments, but what's the purpose that we're living into? If we are not living into a purpose, like mine is, I am a conduit for people to embrace their inner wisdom and unleash their talent and live a life they love. I know my purpose. If anybody tries to take me off that purpose, oh, will you do this? Will you do that? Can you come here? Can you do that? Will you be my friend? Will you go out with me? I got to stay on my purpose. And once you create a purpose, it's easy to see what doesn't fit. But until you create a purpose, you're like a little boat in the Pacific Ocean, or whatever ocean or body of water you are, with no rudder. And Lauren was like that boat with no rudder. If the board wanted this, she went this way. If the general manager wanted that, if the employees were fighting, it was all chaos. So hers was a tornado. So imagine she's a boat in the Pacific Ocean with no rudder, and a tornado comes.
Yes.
And once the compelling purpose is created and codified and shared, then it's time to create a strategy that bridges the people with the organization. So Lauren's company or organization did land preservation. So the whole purpose was saving acres of land and doing whatever we can do to have that land be accessible to people. And then she needed to find a way, with my help, of course, and my company's help, to create a talent strategy that integrated people and land preservation. And then it was time to look at, well, are our leaders really leading? And if so, how are they leading? And what's the gap? So many companies start leadership development, but it's not inside of a purpose. It's not inside of a talent strategy. So the leaders are going off to leadership training, but what's it for? How's it going to show up for the people? So the talent strategy comes first. The compelling purpose comes first. The values come first. Then comes leadership training, because leadership training is about how to make those values come alive at work. And then comes time to build a constructive culture. So how do we put it all together? And what does constructive culture mean? So first of all, intervening in state of mind. Lauren, I'd like you to give a couple of examples of how you took the coaching that you got from me and my company and brought it into the organization so that it didn't just exist within you, you gave it away to the people that you hired.
Yeah, first of all, I have to say that if I hadn't had conscious hiring, I'm not sure I could have found the people that I really needed. So I wasn't hiring myself. I was hiring diversely. So I got the really great people to do the work that they needed to do. I didn't cling to it. And what I got to do was teach them, for state of mind, it was about giving people the opportunity to contribute, for us to have a dialogue about what, I got to learn all this through my coaching as well, have a dialogue about what's working, what's not working, so that we can shift the way limited thinking shows up everywhere. Everybody's got it. I mean, I still have it. And it's not like I take a pill and it's gone, but being able to have a conversation with somebody about what's getting in the way. What do you think about that? I can intervene. I could intervene with somebody and say, what's working, what's not working? Can you have a conversation? What would work better? What could you do differently? If my coaching was from Keen Alignment, made all the difference for me, because I could be that with staff. They could give me the feedback I needed to be a better leader.
Yeah, I remember there was one person that worked for you that you were coaching, and her metaphor was that she felt like she was a passenger in the car, but not that she was driving. And once you uncovered that, then it was time to have her see her own empowerment and what would driving the car look like.
Right.
And here's Lauren's right. There is no magic pill. This takes years. I have been inquiring into my personality and my thinking since 1996. 1996. And how long for you, Lauren, have you been on this journey of continuing to evolve your level of consciousness and your level of knowing yourself so that you can know others?
Yeah, I would say that I've always been a student of personal development without intention. I didn't know what I didn't know, and I didn't know how to even look for it intentionally. I got clear, I think it was when I met you in 2010, and I knew that there was a direct path to personal development that made sense for me. Mm-hmm. So going to Landmark Forum, going to Choice Center, going to Coactive Training Institute. I've been constantly building that, because then I knew what I was doing. I knew exactly what my next step was to take to build my leadership ability, my personal leadership. Even in my own personal life, I'm a leader in my life.
Good. So specifically, intervening in state of mind is about being curious, not coming at it from what you know or what you think you know, but really interacting with other people from a complete clean space and a clear space, and finding out what's going on with people. And when you ask, it may be uncomfortable to hear that this person is in a field with a barn blowing around and shrapnel, but at least then you know. And once you know, you can work with them on moving beyond it. So the next piece is really developing the compelling purpose. So the organization Life is Good, their whole purpose, their mission is to spread the power of optimism. Sweet Green is to inspire healthier communities by connecting people to real food. Patagonia's mission is to build the best product, cause no unnecessary harm, and use business to inspire and implement solutions to the environmental crisis. Anybody can create their own purpose, the organization, the department, the person, but without a purpose, we're headed nowhere. And so, Laura, I don't know if it's fair to ask if you remember the purpose that you all created at the Santa Clara Open Space Authority, or your own purpose for running HR and administration. But if you do, that would be helpful.
You know, I do want to say in this regard that creating my own personal purpose was a great anchor point for me to move everything else forward, because then I understood when I was off base or on base, or if it was in alignment with what my own personal decision making was. So that personal purpose, today I'm a conduit for ease, flow, and harmony for people. And do I remember what the company purpose has been? Been a couple of years since I've looked at their purpose, but it was about preserving land, open space land in Santa Clara County for future generations, something like that, because there's such a big deal with building in Silicon Valley. So it was very compelling because it created space for people to unwind and relax and get connected to nature.
Yeah, and the thing about that purpose for future generations, it was that I remember when we started doing the talent strategy, which is really what's next. Part of building this talent strategy is understanding the life cycle, the employment life cycle, or the human system. Every piece of that system that interacts with people. So recruitment, hiring, onboarding, employee development, succession planning, management, performance management, all of it, looking at each and every one of those mechanisms or those interactions with the human beings that do the work and saying, is how we're treating people aligned with preserving land for future generations. It was so fun for me to be the consultant, and so fun even for Lauren. Like, this whole new energy started to arise. It wasn't just bringing people in anymore. It was bringing people in who could preserve land for future generations. And that's how conscious hiring, she took conscious hiring from a thought. And at the time we were building a software, and Lauren was on our beta team, our beta testing team. And it went from a thought and a product that was being developed to the way the Santa Clara Open Space Authority hires. They still use it today. It is a cornerstone of how Elizabeth Loretto is running HR. And so it really is a key piece. But I want you to hear, folks, that until you deal with your own striving and your own struggle and your own shrapnel coming at you and your own desire to grip and control everything that's happening, even the things you don't even like doing, until you can let go of that, you can't really have the freedom to create a talent strategy. Now, Lauren had a boss who was a new boss. We didn't talk about that, but there was a transition during that time period that a new person came in with a very, very big vision to save lots more land and really actually save the planet. It was a compelling purpose, and that allowed Lauren to propel her purpose and to align everything up. And it wasn't easy. There was pushback from different departments, but over time, over years, they started to believe. And now I will say they believe. But it's taken you a decade with them, and now the new DOO a year. And so that's 11 years, guys and gals. This is not something you do overnight unless you walk in the door and you have a CEO or whoever you report to who says, I believe that people are our most important asset, and you're the person to help me bridge the gap between the enterprise vision and the people doing the work. And if this woman, Lauren Monick, didn't have the commitment to make it happen, it would have died on the vine. I would have still coached the people because I think they enjoy the coaching, but it wouldn't have impacted anybody but the leadership team if it wasn't for her. And I honestly believe that. So it began with Lauren really doing the work on the leader within. So in a minute or less, can you share the things that you had to face about your own management style, about your own personality, and what needed to shift over time for you to be somebody in service of everyone else rather than...
Do you remember when you gave me that foam finger that pointed because I was so bossy, and you had to give it to me to remind me that stop pointing your finger at people and telling them how to do things? That's what I had to really get out of my own way. I had to get curious and not be afraid to listen. I remember asking one of the field people, what feedback can you give me? I had to actually be brave enough to ask that question and to hear the answer and even be okay about crying about what the truth was. I talked over people. I had to tell them how it had to be. I was all about the rules and regulations. And everybody had to do it there was only one way to do things, and it was my way or the highway. And I was really grabbing onto that because it seemed like it was the only way to be. And I had to be willing to be quiet, listen, take feedback, ask questions, be curious. And once I got that those were possible and people wanted them, and they were happy to have heard me ask, what can I do differently? How would you like me to be with you? A huge shift started to happen for me. I got really good feedback pretty quickly about, wow, you're listening. And thank you. I really appreciate it. That made all the difference for me for the learning inside. I knew that what I was doing was starting to shift and people were seeing it.
Good. So, in the beginning, Lauren was, I want to know how to be a better leader. I want to know how to better be a leader. She wanted the leader in front. And maybe she wanted the leader beside, like, how do I co-partner with the guy in the field? Or how do I bring up my next generation leading from behind? Or how do I help the culture? But really the work had to be done with her putting her own oxygen mask on first and working on herself. She mentioned she did the Landmark Forum. Then a few years later, she did a 100-day leadership program. And then she went to the Coaches Training Institute. And all the while, she had a coach, me, who was working with her. And so the leader from the front got developed inside of her working on herself. The co-leader from beside got developed inside of her working on herself. The leader from behind, she became a better coach to the people that reported to her because she did the work on herself. So many coaches, and this drives me crazy, give people a laundry list of, we have clients right now, they have to work on this and this and this and this and this and this. And these people are exasperated by all the work they have to do on themselves. But the coaches are not dealing with what's naturally who you are and what's in the way. And what Keen does with our people is a lot like Leonardo da Vinci when he was interviewed about the David, in Florence. They said, how did you create the David? And Leonardo said, all I did was remove what wasn't David. That's what the leader within is. There is nothing to fix. There is nothing to change. All it is to removing what's not. Lauren wasn't born a control freak. She became that way because she didn't know how else to be. It was something she adopted that was on top of the real her, and all we helped her do was reveal the real her. And when she got to know who the real her was, and people were like, man, I like this lady. It was easy. And that, for me, that's what coaching is.
Yeah.
Coaching is teasing out who the person really is so they can be who they've always wanted to be. It isn't teaching them all sorts of new skills, putting all those new skills on top of a belief system that is, I don't have what it takes. So anyway, I could talk about that for hours and we won't, because it's not what this is about. So ideal culture, when Lauren woke up to what was important to her, she knew that what needed to happen at OSA was to create an ideal culture, one where people were supportive, people were constructive rather than bossing each other around, flexible rather than being rigid, where people were humanistic and sensitive to working together, and where people actually were connected to the overall purpose of preserving land for generations to come or future generations, and that people were achieving goals. Now, she couldn't do this without a lot of other work that she had to do, first on herself, second on the talent strategy, third with the leadership team. So there was 8 years of work. And then when Lauren retired, she paved the way for the new director of operations to come in and cement the culture that she had begun. So I want you to talk a little bit about the infrastructure that you created, that you needed to create for a constructive culture to emerge.
Wow, there was so much work over so many years. One of the biggest things we did was creating mission, vision, values for the agency. It was a really great place to start. That gave everybody an opportunity to have a connection in a way that we had never been connected before. And that began the culture of I'm listening and trust. And through that, we have a common goal. So we were all clear that we were there for nature preservation, and for future generations. We were all on the same page, and it wasn't like it was through telephone line or some pretend thing. So getting leadership to agree, putting in, I know I'm all regulatory and, was wagging my finger, but even putting in structures about who, since we have values, what kind of positions do we need? What kind of consciously thinking about who it is that can do the job that needs to get done in order for us to be relieved of extra work so that we can do the job that we were meant to do instead of clinging. So it's about how to let go of clinging. Those were two really big areas, that leadership development. Mm-hmm.
And then I want to say, so what she's talking about is optimizing people.
Yeah.
She adopted conscious hiring. She's been a big fan of Keen from the beginning, which why we're still friends. No, that's how we became friends, because we were aligned on a purpose. Then the OSA got aligned on their purpose, but then she was so curious. She wanted to do better at bringing people in who could deliver that purpose. And then once conscious hiring was implemented and she understood how to do a role analysis, she then turned that into, how do we develop people? How do we optimize people? So Lauren went to coaching school, because I could have done all the coaching, but my purpose is to unleash the talent in others, not to have it be all about Keen. Whether it's Lauren or Tiffany or Sue or all the hundreds of people we've worked with, it is about empowering them. So Lauren started to work with her people. All of the coaching that she would get, she would then deliver that coaching to all the people she hired in her department and in other departments. And she started to align their development path to, what is the comprehensive position requirement need, and what does this person need to accelerate. And then I want you to talk a little bit about the constraints that again, I don't want to put you on the spot, but that you what needed to stop back then so that people were free to get done what they needed to get done.
Oh, can I just say meetings? I think everybody can relate to meetings. Having a structure around how meetings were going to happen, having an agenda for a meeting, being really clear about what a meeting was going to be, that was very, very important. That needed to stop. Wasn't that it needed to stop, it needed to be reimagined. And there had to be buy-in around it. I mean, I know that I was the one who created for our team this is a very purposeful meeting and it'll take 30 minutes. Like, how can we make it the shortest we can possibly make it?
And the most effective.
Well, that's the whole point. If it's not effective, why are you in the room, right?
So another constraint I would say is, back in the olden days, 10 years ago, 8 years ago, how OSA used to communicate was behind each other's back. So, maybe they went from 6 to 12 back then, or maybe 15, but the way they were communicating is, if they were unhappy about something, they would tell each other. Lots of gossip. And one of the constraints that needed to be removed is the constraint of gossip. And they became the kind of organization that if you had something to say, you said it to the person. And Lauren was pretty brazen about asking for feedback. And when she would ask for feedback, other people would say, oh, that's working for her, I'm going to ask for feedback. So I think two of the big constraints back then were way too long of meetings with no purpose and gossip.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah.
And I think another constraint, back then, nobody had been given performance reviews for 5 years. So people did not know how they were doing. And fundamentally, like, there were no millennials in the workforce 8 years ago, really, maybe 2 or 3, but even people who weren't millennials needed feedback. They were stagnant. They didn't know how they were doing. And so she created this whole process for how to evaluate performance that was connected to the mission and vision and values of the company and connected to the job.
Yeah. And, I do want to say that it's not just about the evaluation, which even once a year is not enough of a time. It was about creating a process in which we could meet weekly or biweekly to give what's working, what's not working. Creating that process was so much more than just giving an evaluation. It was
talking one-on-ones allowed you to remove constraints.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah,
it was the most important thing I think that happened.
I just heard that yesterday at Aquachem. We were out there in Knoxville, Tennessee, and we had 40 people, and they said that the one-on-ones that had begun since they did the level set, they actually feel like they're all on the same team. So one-on-ones is a great way to remove constraints. Anything you want to say about how the things you did stimulated engagement and innovation, and what kind of things, how that happened? And if not, I'll speak to it.
Well, we'd do one-on-ones, and people would have ideas, and we could say, how would you like to implement that? How do you think it should happen? It wasn't me controlling anymore. It was them creating their idea and then making it come alive. And then there would be a group meeting where everybody got to put in their ideas and brainstorm and create solutions. So I'd say those were two really big things that happened.
Good. And then ultimately, all of this gives people the empowerment. They are recognized because they're meeting often, right? You can't help but recognize people when you're in front of them and you're talking about what's working. And then people got a reward for many people is just acknowledgement. Look me in the eyes, into me see, give me a relationship.
Mm-hmm.
So when you've got a purpose and you put the system in place, people naturally are empowered. When Lauren stopped clinging and telling, and then her business partner stopped telling, everything, even Derek is a guy who's still there. He is one of the best leaders I've ever worked with. His whole team feels empowered. Got outstanding 360s, but that wasn't always the way it was. Back in the day, a decade ago, everybody was controlling. So purposeful. Lauren, say a little bit about the purpose you invented for yourself, and then how it moved into the purpose for OSA, and how that moved into the purpose for community, and then for you, how that went bigger.
So my purpose, it's always been some version of this. I am a conduit for ease, flow, and harmony. And when I got clear that I was about ease and flow and harmony, which is perfect for a director of administrative operations, because I'm creating something is supposed to move smoothly. Once I got clear about that was my goal, I could be in with creating one for my department and one for the company, and we could connect our values together through our purposes. And we could see how it's like a string of pearls, each one is connected and they make something beautiful when they're all together and all in the same string. We were able to serve our community in a way that felt fulfilling and purposeful and deeply engaging, which makes a better world because we show up in the world in a way that the world can see that we're on purpose.
Yeah, and for sure. So we've talked a lot about the people and optimizing the people. I want you to share a little bit about your deeper dive into your one-on-ones when you were building, she didn't mention it, but they were only 6 people and then they were 40 when she left. So over that time period, she talk 1 minute or less about the sheet you made of all the duties, and then how you hired all those people, and then how you empowered those people, and how you interweaved all of this into that. 1 minute.
That's a lot. So we created something called a CPR, comprehensive position requirement, which talks about all the things that the job is going to do and what success looks like for the job. So a person gets hired knowing exactly what their job is. So we would sit down, let's just take one position. We would sit down when they got hired, one of my people, and we'd say, this is what's expected. And if something's not working, or, do I have permission to talk to you about that? We're going to check in once a week. And I had a form that I would do a check-in, and they would have it, and they knew what to expect in this meeting. You get to give me feedback. I get to give you feedback. Let's talk about projects and some basic things like that. That one thing made all the difference with my people, is to be able to create from the CPR, which is part of the conscious hiring program, to use that and then bring it into the feedback loop, which is the one-on-one, and then a regular evaluation, and then even updating the CPR on a regular basis when it looked like somebody was taking on more responsibility, or someone handed something off, or it didn't just sit still. It was a constantly co-created process. I think that was pretty simple. Harder to imagine when I didn't know what I was doing, when I was clinging. Much easier when I had a purpose, and I also was clear about what each position was supposed to be doing. Each person knew what their role was and what value they were bringing and what value they created for themselves, and that they could strive for more if they wanted it. Anything else, Maj?
No, I think that's perfect. And one thing I want to say about OSA is everyone Lauren hired is still there. They're happy in their job. And when Lauren hired, she literally had a fine-tuned machine for her replacement to come in. And I'm not saying it's been easy for her replacement. There's work there, but she didn't have to fix everything that was broken. She got to start on a already department that was in momentum, and she got to take it up to the next level. So really, it begins with you. It's about having a purpose for your role. It's about authentically living into that purpose and not being who you're not, but removing those things that are in your way for yourself. It's about being inspired and then being able to give that inspiration away. You can't fake it till you make it around inspiration. It's got to be authentic. Operating with integrity. It wasn't easy for Lauren to interview people and say what works and doesn't work about my leadership. It wasn't easy. She had to hear it, and then she actually got the opportunity to apply it. And it was her relationship with her own word that had her continue to get better. And she's got lots of stories in her own life about her own health and wellness that with regards to integrity. She's one of the most integrous people I know when it comes to health and wellness. And any leader must have a connection with their word, or people can see right through it. The commitment to people, the commitment to developing others, the commitment to having the people around you flourish, critical if you want to create a constructive culture. And then accountability, which is one of the most challenging competencies for the globe around leadership. Nobody wants to be the bad guy. Nobody wants to be the heavy. And accountability sort of is construed as conflict or confrontation, but accountability's got to be there, because without it, nothing works. Let's see what else we have here. Okay, so what's in the way? Now that you've got everything you've got, what's in the way for you around implementing this? And Lauren, what was in your way? You know, in general, we hear lack of trust in ourselves, lack of trust from the managers to us, from the employees to us, from us to our boss, past failures, the way people listen to us, everybody's resistance to change, being stuck below the power freedom line, and hopelessness, fear, or frustration in that I can't do it. But fundamentally, if this is about going from striving, from workplace striving, working hard, clinging, being the boss, being the heavy, to thriving, what was in your way? What was the biggest thing in your way? And on that, we'll complete this section.
Fear that if I didn't control it all, and I wasn't the one who got to make all the decisions about how this was going to work, culture, HR, whatever I was in charge of, that I wouldn't have a job. I was afraid I wouldn't have a job, that I wouldn't be providing value because I couldn't see beyond that. That's where I started. And
yeah, that's so good. That's so good, because as you're saying that, I remember we actually had to coach around that. If I empower everybody to do the things that I'm doing, then what value do I provide? And I will say, Lauren, in all of the managers, mid-level, and even executives that I've worked with, every one of them at one point gets to that. Oh God, if I empower everybody else, what's my role? What do I do then? Good. Thank you so much. Nice. So a little bit about diversity and inclusion. And when you brought in conscious hiring, how did that impact the silo thinking? How did that bring in different people and a diversity? And just say a little bit about diversity and inclusion.
You can't know what you don't know and who you need until you look at every single role and every single thing that's happening in your organization. You don't even know where your gaps are. If you're hiring a position name, you're not hiring fulfilling the actual work that needs to get done, the skills that need to happen. The diversity comes in when you're absolutely clear about what roles need to happen and what tasks and what skills need to be in place, what personalities need to be in place. Diversity is not just about skin tone or ethnicity. It's not that. It's about age. Or even gender, honestly. I mean, you can have those things start to show up when you're looking for the right skills, the right competencies, the right values for what the job is that you need, and for the company that you're in, or the organization that you're in. That really became crystal clear. And I didn't keep hiring myself, because I don't need to work with me.
Yeah, that's such a great point. I'm going back 20 years ago. We had a customer, back then their name was Hewitt, and so did Arthur Anderson. They had a mold they hired everybody to the mold. And if you figured out the mold, you would make a lot of money as a recruiter. But the point is everybody was the same. It was vanilla. It was very vanilla. And they did not have diversity in their organization. Everybody had the exact same personality. And what I noticed in you and other people who implement conscious hiring, when you're hiring for values and competencies and behaviors, you're hiring humans. You're not hiring the sleeve of what fits.
You know what? We ended up hiring inspiration, effectiveness, excitement, vibrancy in the organization. It actually pumped blood into the organization to have different types of people with different types of thinking.
Yeah, awesome. So I'd like to thank you for being here today. And I want to offer you the very first assessment we gave Lauren when we started working with her. This is one of the best tools on the market. I've been using it for 15 years, and I used it before then in my recruiting business. It helps you look at your perspective, your view on people, on the work that has to get done, and on the big picture. And then it has you look at your relationship with yourself, how you view yourself, how you view your contribution, has you look at your values, what's important to you, and how you get work done. And then it ranks you in top 7 leadership categories. What I'll say about the assessment is it's not black and white. It's how you feel today. And it gives you an opportunity to check in and say, is what's on this paper indicative of how I want to be leading? And so please take advantage of it. It's free. It's normally $500. And then we give you an opportunity to go online to our Keen Institute to learn about how to interpret it. So the number is 44222 on your phone, and then type in maximize 123, and you can get a free copy of that. And then Lauren, would you speak a little bit about the ways they can work with Keen Alignment?
Yeah, coaching changed my life. Coaching changed my life. So great coaches at Keen, and thank you, Maji, for being my coach for so many years. We went to retreats. We would have leadership retreats, and it would be a great way for us to be able to connect to each other, reconnect to our purpose, create the purpose, connect to our purpose, our mission, our values, work through strategy, creating a strategic way to move forward, getting all the junk out of the way. That's a big one. What's getting in our way. We talk about that as a team. In leadership and the whole organization. That was really important.
And I want to add that in our retreats, it's always interactive, experiential. So we give people projects to work on, and then we coach them through how they're working together and what are the operating states of organizational development that they're in, and then how are they operating in the 7 levels of individual, group, and organizational effectiveness. And then Lauren, anything about the online institute for people who may not be able to afford coaching, or it's not in the cards for them to either come to a retreat themselves or to have their company do a retreat.
Yeah, it's a great way to learn conscious hiring, some leadership skills. It's not quite the same as having a retreat, but you definitely get a great taste for things you can put in place right away. You could actually use some of the things that you're learning off the university in order to up your game, for sure.
So we have 40 classes. We have, I think, 10 in conscious hiring and 30 in leadership. We have downloadable tools. Everything Keen does has been turned into a do-it-yourself so it can fit any budget. And then lastly, we're having a retreat that Lauren will be at in October, and it will be here in the Bay Area, and it's transforming your culture from the inside out, and it's limited to 35 people. And really, this is the opportunity to explore working in and leading an organization where people are operating in a high level of constructive, self-actualizing, high achieving, affiliative, humanistic. You'll walk away from the workshop with an inspiring sense of purpose for yourself and for your role. And then we will also work with you on creating a talent strategy that you can bring back to the organization. So thank you so much for your time and attention. We appreciate it. If you want to reach Lauren or I, you can reach us at Keen Alignment, or you can find us on LinkedIn. Thank you again for your time and for your attention. Thank you, Lauren. And I appreciate everything you've learned and all the trust you've had in me.
Thank you, Maji.
All right. Bye-bye, everybody.